Jenna was electrifying when I first met her. She didn't simply enter a room, she directed it with a laugh that could make mid-conversation outsiders stop and turn. Anyone could be left reeling by her cutting wit. Not only was she gorgeous, but she was also charismatic, the kind of woman who drew people in without trying. If I were her biggest admirer, I would have been impervious too. But I wasn't. I was mesmerized by the energy she brought into my life. After we were married, I believed I had finally discovered my forever home. I wanted us to be this unstoppable duo, the whirlwind and the steady anchor. And for a while, it worked. Our differences were a strength, striking a balance between imperfections. At first, I didn't notice the shift. The cracks were subtle, easy to dismiss. Jenna had always been provocative, but it seemed harmless. It was part of the package, part of the charm that shaped who she was. She could spark a conversation with anyone, and I always adored that about her. But eventually, the harmless became harder to ignore. A lingering look at a waiter during dinner, a laugh that felt just a little too enthusiastic over someone else's joke. Minor details, on their own, meaningless. But together they started forming a pattern I couldn't unsee. I remember the first time I said something. We were at a party. She was caught in the middle of what looked like a private moment with some guy. They weren't touching, but the way she leaned in, the way she tilted her head, it made my stomach twist. Later that night, I asked her, "Jenna, what was that back there?" She looked at me like I was a stranger. "Between you and that guy, you seemed close. I'm not sure." She rolled her eyes. Dismissive. "Oh, please, stop being dumb. He's just a friend." It was the same defense she used every time I questioned her. Every time her actions made me feel like I was competing for her attention, she'd laugh it off, accuse me of being jealous, insecure, and I'd back off, convinced I was overreacting. But the feelings didn't go away. They gnawed at me in the quiet moments, the moments where the silence got louder. The worst part wasn't the flirting. It was how Jenna handled it. As if it were my issue, not hers. She'd turn my discomfort into a joke. "Ethan, you're so cute when you're jealous," she'd purr, shaking her head. But it didn't feel cute. It felt like a slap. Like my concerns weren't real. Our foundation was cracking, and no matter how many times I tried to tell her, she never seemed to care. Eventually, I started questioning myself. Was I being too sensitive? Was I insecure? Maybe. She was just outgoing. Maybe this was just Jenna. But even if that was true, I didn't want to be the guy who policed his wife's every move. That wasn't the kind of marriage I signed up for. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. Like I was becoming an afterthought in my own life. Like I was always fighting for scraps of her attention. A year into those feelings, we were at another, one of her glamorous parties. She thrived in that environment. Me? I hung back, nursed a drink, tried to blend in. That's when I saw him. Tall, stylish, confident. He leaned against the bar like he owned the place, and when his eyes landed on Jenna, I felt it, her smile, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, like a reflex, like instinct. I tried to brush it off, but the more I watched, the more I realized I was witnessing something unfold, and I was powerless to stop it. She kept glancing back, at him. And he wasn't just looking. He was studying her. Eventually, he made his move. Confident strides, direct eye contact, and Jenna? She glowed. They spoke. She laughed. That laugh, the one I hadn't heard in years, the one filled with joy and mystery. I clenched my jaw. Tried to stay calm, tried to stay collected. I approached, carefully. She smiled when she saw me. "There you are, Ethan," she said, her tone bright. "This is Lucas. He works in PR." Lucas smiled. "You've got an interesting wife," he said, shaking my hand. "She's been telling me about your business. Impressive stuff." I shook his hand, tightly. We stood there in that awkward triangle of tension. And then Jenna said, "Lucas has some fantastic ideas for expanding your client base." I forced a smile. "Maybe later. I wanted to steal you for a moment, Jenna. We haven't had a chance to talk." Her smile faltered, just for a second. Then she rebounded. "Of course," she said, brushing her hand against my arm. "Excuse us, Lucas." As we walked away, I leaned in. "You think I didn't notice you watching him?" She stopped, smirked. Then, in a low voice brimming with defiance, she said, "Then watch this, Ethan. I'm going to give him a show." I stared at her, stunned. She didn't deny it, didn't wave it off. She owned it, so I leaned in too, voice cold, steady. "I'm leaving before the music stops." She blinked. Her smirk wavered, but just a little. Then she laughed. "Oh, please," she said. "You won't go." But this time, she was wrong. I stayed for the rest of the night, silent, watching her drift from person to person, laughing, glowing, commanding the room. But I didn't recognize her anymore. I didn't want her anymore. By the time we left the party, I knew. I wasn't going to keep pretending. I couldn't fix this. And I couldn't keep acting like Jenna was someone she wasn't. As we walked in silence toward the car, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Because for the first time, I wasn't afraid to let go. That night, I woke up for the first time. "Jenna, I've let it go 100 times. I haven't paid attention to your behavior. I've swallowed my dignity in front of other men. Every time I tried to talk, every time I tried to make this work. But the moment you made me feel small, when I mustered every ounce of patience just to speak to you, for the sake of this marriage, and you stayed indifferent, that was the night something broke." Her eyes narrowed. "But she didn't care. When I first noticed a glimmer of change, being defensive is unfair," she remarked, arms crossed. "I've done everything I could for this marriage," I said, my voice lower now, but still just as dramatic. "You're done, Jenna, because all you ever did was wait for me." "My darling," I added, "you gave me nothing but silence, while I gave you my energy." She opened her mouth to reply, but closed it again. No expression. "You know what, Ethan? Maybe this was a mistake," she said coldly. "Maybe we're just not meant to be." Her words hit like a kick to the stomach. But instead of shattering me, they solidified something inside me. She wasn't going to change. She wasn't prepared to fight for us. And I was done defending someone who couldn't even acknowledge there was a problem. "Maybe you're right," I said, my voice firm, icy. "Maybe this was a mistake. But let me tell you something. I won't make it again."